Yeah, my name is Jacob Christensen. I'm the creative director of JDC Video. I've owned and operated my own video production company for over a decade now. I did that in undergrad. I did that in my master's program, both of which are at the University of Washington. Go Dogs. I don't know. I live on an island and I love hanging out with my dog. Those are my fun facts for now.
Hey y'all, my name is Steph. I take they, them pronouns, or just Steph. I am the Community and Social Impact Manager for the Seattle Reign. We play in the National Women's Soccer League. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the National Women's Soccer League before. Cool. Raise your hand if you have a team that you like in the National Women's Soccer League. It doesn't have to be us, it's okay. There's some good players, cool. I appreciate that, good hands. So we play in the only professional women's soccer league in the United States, although USL is gonna put us up for our money in a little bit here with the women's league growing. But all to say, I have had the pleasure of working with some of our amazing panelists here today, or learning from both of them actually, as well as I'm looking forward to learning from you. I was at the ComLead program in 2018 and have had quite a little bit of a journey, not just in sports, but outside of sports. So we'll talk a little bit about that later, but hope you all are enjoying your afternoon, and I'll pass it on forward.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna Demers and I work at C+C. We are a marketing agency emphasizing in social good causes. I went to UW and the Common Program for undergrad, and I'm happy to be back here with you all today. And yeah, excited to talk to you. Hi everyone, I'm Parisa. I graduated from the UW in December of 2010. I worked at the UW Daily. I see a little Daily sticker over there. I was the copy chief at the Daily while I was here. Double major in journalism and English. I left the UW to work at Amazon, and I spent 12 years there, started an entry-level position in the Kindle self-publishing organization, and left the company as the vice president of the Delivery Service Partner Program, which is all the Prime Blue vans you see delivering packages to your front door. That was my business. And now I work at a company called Flexport, leading their fulfillment business. So I think I'm the only panelist who's not directly working in communications, but we'll talk about how it's incredibly relevant for what I do today.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we will start with the questions. We have 3 questions today, and then we can ask the audience if they have any questions. And we can start with Teresa because you have a microphone. If that's okay, we'll kind of stay back. All right, so the first question is, how have the skills you've learned through the communication department helped you both in your regular job duties and in your general professional journey?
Yeah, so being a journalism major was incredibly helpful in getting assimilated into Amazon. Amazon's a very document-driven culture, and when you think about what journalism is all about, to identify a good story, you have to understand problems that people are facing in the world. To be able to understand what are the key components of those problems, you talk to them. And Amazon's a very customer-obsessed culture, so it was all about talking to customers. And then at the end of the day, you have to outline business proposals in the form of a document. The document has to be concise, it has to be data-oriented. Journalists are doing that all day long. And so the notion of being able to write a concise, to the point piece that was focused on an important problem was very relevant at Amazon. And I think being a good writer was a huge proponent of me being able to kind of climb the ladder there quickly, because you could understand business cases and communicate with leaders of all levels through that. And then I think in general, just being able to be a storyteller, talking about yourself, even on your resume, has been a really huge component of being able to kind of network in the real world. And so now, towards the end of my time at Amazon, I had to speak publicly to the media about a lot of things we were doing, and being able to understand how to share a message in the right way to the broader public was a huge component, I think, of being able to get my point across. So I would say, focus on the writing skills that you're learning here, because even in business contexts that have nothing to do with marketing or communications per se, they still become super relevant, even in financial documents or technical documents, which are all the kind of documents I write now.
Yeah, I would echo what you're saying as well. Writing comes in any profession, and especially where you're using it now to a job, to getting a new job, like you said. The other thing I'd say is networking as well. Network with your peers, network with your professors. Was how I got a job at C+C, was through networking. And a lot of us here work together today, and like you would come across being part of a panel like this as networking. So I think just staying in contact with people and talking to your peers and talking to other people within the department will definitely set you up for success. And you never know, like, when somebody might need a favor or you have something that maybe somebody else could help you with, and reaching out and being able to have that connection has paid off several times for me.
Yes, so I actually didn't come here for undergrad. I went to undergrad on the East Coast at a university called Temple University in Philadelphia. I ended up back out here because I knew that the U was going to be a really great place for me to explore research and really think about problems in sport in a larger way. And going to ComLead, which is the graduate program here, I went the MCC Ed track, which is Community and Networks track. And my professors constantly said, get out of sports. They said, stop what you're doing. You've already worked at Major League Baseball. You've worked for Sounders. You've done so much broadcasting. It's time for you to diversify your portfolio if you really want to work in community work, but most importantly in DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work. So what I really focused on in my graduate program was systems approach-based communication. So how we take social work principles and social determinants of health principles, meaning the places where you receive access to transportation, access to education, access to food, all of those things. How do we create communications products that allow us not only to be able to include other audiences, but create true life-saving resources? Had a really awesome opportunity to do that at C+C. Anna was actually my former supervisor. I still continue to learn from Anna. Anna's the best. And truly, in learning from Anna and so many others at C+C, we have to understand the larger world around us in order for us to understand how we are connecting to our audiences. But even further than that, how grassroots, how we touch that audience and how that audience really interacts with us. So I would say that coming to UW really transformed my entire career. I was a broadcaster for the majority of that, working at Major League Baseball. I also broadcasted a few games for the National Women's Soccer League, USA Field Hockey. But really being pushed by my wife, who's the social worker herself, a maternal mental health social worker. She works in Swedish. She said, what are you really doing as a white person for community? And what are you doing, wanting to do that in sport? And so identifying in my white body and understanding working at Major League Baseball, like, as a queer body, like, yeah, maybe I'm making a difference, but am I really making a difference? No. And so I really had to look inside my privilege and come back out, get some more education to be able to then learn how to really be in community with each other. So I would say get out of your comfort zone. So get out of your comfort zone and go into your growth zone and try things that maybe you didn't think you'd be interested in, because whether it was me working at C+C or working at the Seattle Department of Transportation, and now back in sports, life is really crazy and the connections you make here are really important. So, keep those things in mind and don't just stay on one track on what you're doing. Be open to all those possibilities, because you might end up being right where you think you want to, just a little bit later on down the road.
That was fire. That was fire. You all took everything. I mean, it's so true that being able. It sounds silly, I know, in ChatGPT and everything, but writing a well fleshed out email that really makes sense and gets your ideas across and gets everyone on the same page. Yeah, I run a video production company. I use cameras, we win awards, we just won 5 last week, we're always out making commercials and stuff, thank you. But 80% of my job is emailing people, probably. It's a lot of communication, because I have to make sure the crew's on the same page, that the clients are on the same page, that we're all driving towards the same end mission. So communicating is super important. Well written out email, yes. Also, you just popped into my mind, the internship component. I think I did like 3 internships, none of which were paid. I say that to Shay, I think they should all be paid, at least something. But I did internships, and I credit a lot of my early journey to getting, I did an internship that I hated, and that made me realize I never want to go down this pathway. So failing fast is really valuable. But above everything, and I can, if you're on Facebook right now, pay attention in the next 30 seconds, this is what you need. Your network matters so much, and it's already been said, but if you have a device in front of you right now, and you have names of professionals that are coming and care to share their information with you, these should be connections on LinkedIn. You should be connecting to people that are your peers, that are your instructors, that are coming and guest lecturing to you, because out of our, I counted this morning, so I knew this was going to come up, out of our 9 clients that we're currently working with, that I'm emailing every day with, 7 are people that I met through communication department. The value of your network is so valuable. It's a huge part of why we actually educated, secondary education, college, etc. Yeah. Y'all said it already.
We can start this next one.
Perfect. I'll steal the good answers straight away.
All right, so the second question is, which of your experiences within the communication department or in relation to comms did you find to be the most valuable? Why?
I feel like my answer kind of dipped into this question. Realistically, for me, classes were important, but the people I met through the classes were so valuable. A lot of those people were at my wedding. We are friends to this day. We hang out together. Steph and I, we did master's program together. We hang out. Not all the time, but sometimes.
That's not fair.
We'll get you up. We'll go hang out. But for me, if I can summarize my entire college journey into a couple sentences, it's show up to going, and whether it's just hanging out or actually working on a group project and caring about it and actually interacting with people, those communication relationships are so valuable. Might seem unimportant right now, so valuable in 2, 3, 5+ years.
Yes, we do need to get lunch soon. Which means that I get to continue networking with this incredible filmmaker and communicator, and that keeps our relationship going. The amount of times I've had to call different friends because we have issues with our players, or our players, can't make a shoot one day, we've already scheduled this. How do we rearrange this, coordinate that? And some of these folks here on the panel, maybe more folks on this panel, will see why getting involved in the madness too is fun. But all to say, when I was here at UW, the thing for me that was the most important, because I'm from out of state, and I know for folks that identify as being international students or from out of state, you're really trying to build your network here in the Seattle area. And that was really key for me choosing between the University of Oregon's StratCom program and UW's program, because I wanted to be here. So if you're ever considering a graduate program, consider it where you want to be geographically, because that's where you're going to make your deepest connections, not necessarily a brand name, although UW is a pretty good brand name. I like that. Go Dogs. But also say, the most important connection I made, 2 connections I'd have to say, is Sejal Parikh, who is a part-time professor at the ComLead program, was also the former budget chair for the city of Seattle. These are people that are teaching you, right? Your teachers may have these connections, but Sejal really pushed me to build programming through the lens of equity and communications, and Sejal's the reason why $15 an hour passed in this city, and why our city is the, kind of the beacon for other cities when it comes to that, although we can talk economic insustainabilities and all of those things too. But all to say, Sejal has been a big part of that with Pramila Jayapal and that sector of folks. And then I did a graduate internship through my internship at SDOT with a social worker through UW. Her name was Anya. She was now the transit equity manager at the city of Seattle. And so both of these women who identify as strong brown women really looked at me and said, we have to consider other things outside of what your privileges are, and expanding that. And so sometimes your professors, they may grind your gears, but there's a reason why somebody's pushing you in a direction to get the best out of you. And as somebody who really had to relearn the way that I think, walk, talk, and act in the work I'm doing with our athletes, it all starts with the way that we go into community. So those professors and my internship supervisor and one of my really good friends, best friends, Anya, that's why I became, and what I'm continuing to do what I do. So really be invested not only in the comm department, but be curious about other departments. I mean, Robin DeAngelo is on this campus somewhere. There's a lot of really great professors in so many different spaces that might just be interested in something that you like, but from a comms lens, you might be able to get into that organization too. So think about every person that you're meeting as a connection here, but particularly your professors who know you inside and out and can refer you to other work or other ways of thinking that can support your career journey.
I want to pick up, Jake, what you were saying kind of about trying things, and I think also you want to try things in school in order to find out what you like, but also I think David highlighted dislikes is also a strength and really big key to your success. Like, you want to have fun and enjoy what you're working on, and if you do an internship and you realize that that's not what you enjoy and not what you like, that is a win. Like, you have to check that box off and be like, I'm going to look at other things, and then you know you don't like it. I think especially in school and in internships is the perfect place to try those things, and like Steph's saying, explore things even with outside the comm department or within it, to figure out where you feel like you really excel and hit your stride and you feel passionate about, because that will show through in your work. So definitely keep exploring and continue to do that, because this is the perfect time to do that.
First, I want to say good job to all the people who listened to Jacob's advice. I'm getting LinkedIn pinged like crazy, so Bias for Action, amazing. I loved you, Dub. My time here, go Dog. Are figs still a thing? Yes, figs? Freshman interest groups? Yes? Okay, you guys got it. So my fig was amazing. I've heard they were very hit or miss. I'm best friends with half of my figs still. So that was super impactful. The reason I got the job at Amazon, a tech company, not a software engineer, was because of my time at the Daily. So just like she's doing, she's working for the comms department, I would find a job on campus. I also did many internships, all of which were unpaid. I looked at all my business school friends who were getting paid ridiculous money out of their internships, and I was like, what the fuck? But, take a job at school that actually pays you and likely opens lots of doors. I got into management at the Daily. These things were things I didn't think I could do with a campus job, but it taught me so much. And when I talked to people who hired me at Amazon, they told me it was that job that got you this big job that opened so many doors for me. The other thing I would suggest, I did a study abroad as well, and we went to Argentina. I think it was with a journalism professor. I don't remember her name, but I'm going to look her up to find it. But that was super fun. And the last piece of advice I would give is apply for the scholarships that connect you with broader communities. I applied for at least, I'd say 10 different kinds of scholarships, some of which helped get me to study abroad, some of which helped get me opportunities for interviews, and I got half of them. And I think when you look at scholarships, sometimes it looks daunting, oh, my story's not good enough, or I'm not good enough, or my grades aren't good enough. Just apply, and you'd be surprised as to how much people are interested in your background, and maybe your opinion is going to add some diverse perspective to what that scholarship's looking to accomplish. So very similar to my colleagues' advice, just show up and do as much out of this experience as you can, because every single one of them will open a door in some shape or form.
Yeah. And I will just say that my internship was paid.
Lucky you.
So just so you guys know that, we also have some scholarships. I applied for over 50 scholarships, and I applied for one and I received one, so.
Look at that, perfect. This is a perfect example.
All right, so the last question I feel like we touched on a little bit, but I'll still ask it. What would you recommend for career communication students to do during their time in undergrad to prepare them for life after UW?
I do think the one thing I didn't share, but I think you touched on it lightly, was this notion of trying different classes outside of just your core department, not just different internships, because sometimes those are hard to come by. But experience, like if you have friends, as an example, I have lots of friends in the business school, it was helpful to kind of compare and contrast our experiences, because the more, I'll just belabor the point I make because it's so important, the more you experience things you don't like, you will save years of your life later on. So just, again, try lots of different things, try different classes, talk to your friends, and realize how helpful professors are. They seem big and scary sometimes. Professor Fritz does not seem big and scary, but it's like make relationships with these professors. They're super helpful to you in the long run.
Sure. I think that this echoes, again, what we're all saying, but I know that we're saying like internships are a great place to try things out. It can also be a real struggle to find an internship. You're applying to a lot of things. So sometimes an easier way to add skills to your resume is by like participating in things in the comm department or even clubs on campus. There are often times where we have hired people as interns in our office because they had measurable results of their club of, something small like setting up an event at the hub, and they have like numbers for social ads of how many people attended and how many days it went for. So if you can get some sort of metrics behind your involvement, that's a perfect thing to add to your resume. And participating in a club is sometimes an easier entry than getting an internship, or is the way that maybe you would get that internship. So I know there's a lot, like you are already in school and there's a lot of work to do there, and so I also want to acknowledge that you are all working really hard at school and that's a priority. But like again, try and find something that you enjoy so that participating in a club is a fun experience. And like we said, if it turns out you don't like it, then you can move on.
I'm going to go a completely different direction. And I want to also affirm for you all that I think the most important thing to consider is work-life balance and taking care of yourself, your family, and all of the other responsibilities that we know that you all are going through. School is a lot, and I just mentioned it, right? There has to be times where you put that work-life balance into place, where you allow cultural events, family events, and the goodness of what you're working all for to come into your life right now. So just ensuring that you are putting up those boundaries, right? Like when you need to put up boundaries, it's very easy for me to be like, yes, give me, more, I'll do it. Because with our women's soccer team, right, we have to get people involved in our movement. And so I'm fearing that if I miss an email, right, that we're missing a piece to the way that our team is playing on the field, because they're playing for us to succeed in some type of way, yet we can't succeed if we don't take a break or a rest, and look at each other and really say okay, I got you. You need to go take that break today, that's cool. That is probably just as important as working your buns off, because capitalism is capitalism. It will work you to the bone, and life is so much more than just work. And if you want to work in sports, you're going to be working the weekends and nights. And how do I learn how to say, today I'm actually going to take off from this time to this time so I can spend it with my wife, with my new puppy, with my friends and my family. So that's just equally as important, I say, as doing all of the things that you can, because you can't do all of the things without your head on the swivel first.
I'm ready. I thought of something different. First off, who did it? Who actually went on LinkedIn and added these people? I see one hand. Oh, I was going to run and do a high five. You're so far away. I'm sorry. Okay. The thing I really wanted to share, which honestly encapsulates everything that we've said so far, is we feel like we have structure in life when we're going through the schooling system. And now you're you went through high school. Yeah, after grade 10, you go to 11 and 12. And then after 12, you do what every normal person does, right? You go and do your undergraduate degree. And you might be entering the point of wait, what's after that? like the river just kind of stops and like there's a plunge. Like how do I prepare for that? A huge thing that I tell people all the time is like networking has gotten me very far in life. And I don't mean like icky transactional networking where it's like you show up and you're like, hey, here's a business card, nice meeting you, bye, and like, hey, did you call me? You want to work? But like actually getting to know people and being friends with people. The structure will end when you graduate. Spoilers, the structure's already gone. Like, you are no longer in the system of, I have to do the next grade, I have to do the next grade, and get the next credits and do the next thing. If you want a job when you graduate, you don't graduate, then start networking, then do an internship, then start thinking about what the future holds. You want to like hit the ground running and do that stuff as soon as you can. I'm not saying that you should like lose sleep and you know like go and do everything, but you do have to pick your battles and find the things for you that is really valuable. I love the mention of like getting involved with clubs and like making that your own internship. I don't know if I've ever really thought of it that way, but I was involved with a club, with an entrepreneurial club at UW, which like totally fit me. And some of those people that I was like creating companies with still call me today and would say, hey, now we need a video because we saw that's the path you went down. Big picture. The world is scary. Like, rules are kind of there, but like it's really up to our own selves to figure out what our pathways are. So don't hold yourself back. You know, put yourself out there, fail fast, go and try to see what you like because it is out there. There is a job that can bring you at least 10% joy in life. I gave it one of the wrong words. We can do better than that.
Yeah.
We can do better than that. Yeah. Thank you. You are awesome. So I want to just like continue the conversation.
Well, we just might, the Q&A.
Yeah, and then all of this to say like, who's got good questions? I don't know if that was my place to actually ask that. So.
Well, I can just say it. So we can open it up to the audience now. If anyone has a question, you can raise their hand, and then I think the TAs are gonna. Got it. Or all right, we're gonna get mic back and forth.
Oh, this is like
Yeah, this is
you got your shut that one.
Yeah. And make sure you remember to say your first and last name. I'm Sophia Halgren, and what is a story that you've had a really difficult situation in your work career or even in just school where you had to use your communication skills to find a solution? Okay.
I can search this.
You just asked my favorite interview question, so I'm like so excited. I ask this question in interviews a lot because I think we would all say in our jobs, you can have the best laid plans and something happens and it starts to go sideways and you're gonna have to think on your feet. And there was a time where, so C+C works on social good causes, so we're working on marketing that is about behaviors, not about buying products. So in this case, it was a campaign for the Public Health Department of Seattle and King County, and we were putting together a float for the Pride Parade here in June. And we were supposed to have acrobats on a float with a trampoline, and the trampoline was not here. And so I had to start calling around to all like Big Fives Targets in the area to try to find a trampoline because we literally needed one for the entire success of our float. And I found it at Big Five up north. But it's just like, you never know when those kind of things are gonna happen. And we've also had times where we needed a clock to be running outside, it was gonna be raining, and so needed to, again, think on your feet and thought of like, where would I see a clock like that can be outside and operate without power? And it's like at the end of a race, there's a clock, races are outside, so we got that, and just like thinking on your feet, and problem solving, even coming to someone and saying like, look, I've tried calling all the Big Fives in the area and I can't find a trampoline, is something to come to someone with an answer, and then they have seen that you have brought forward some sort of solution to the problem. So thank you for asking the question. It's like a personal favorite of mine. Anybody else?
Shots fired.
Okay.
Hi, this is Robert Campbell. Over here in the Lawrence, Wednesburg.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
We'll move around. Hi, my name is Zaria Miguel. I'm an international student and I'm learning psychology. I'm really into sports and especially soccer. And I really want to ask, as a woman in sports, do you feel really hard to like start to networking or start to get into something? And especially when you are not like learning STEM, because I'm in psychology, so I'm really curious what I can do, and is there really big troubles of getting into it?
So wonderful to meet you. I'm also a huge football, soccer fan, so appreciate that. So just to be clear too, I also identify as non-binary. I use they, them pronouns or just Steph. However, you bring up a really great point, because when we talk about the differences between these two populations that we're serving, they have two very different characteristics, and of course women and gender diverse people, like, we often get lumped together. So again, I really appreciate you bringing that forth and allowing us to, you know, talk a little bit further about that too. So with women's sports and networking, sports in general is probably, especially in the United States, one of the most political entities outside of politics to get yourself involved with. Having as many connections into the places where you want to get is going to be key to you know, getting the interview that you want to get to, or the place that you want to get to. With women's soccer right now, we're on a trajectory that is continuously exponential. I don't know if folks know this or not, but last year, before the start of this season, we had signed a $530 million advertising marketing television deal for our games to be broadcasted on CBS, ABC, Amazon Prime, thank you, as well as Scripps and so many other places. And so there are so many new teams that are emerging in our league, in the W too. We can see that in the W, Golden State's going to be getting something good. I know that Curry's probably going to be cooking up something with his kids there too. So it's going to be, where women's sports is going, it's exponential. I think what you have to think about too, and what I don't have the lens of as an international student, right, is thinking about what do you bring to UW, right, that brought you here. And then that same special sauce that you have, right, what makes you different because you have a different perspective, right, that brings you into sport. Because right now in women's sports, from a psychology and social work lens, player care, player aftercare are emerging fields where, I mean, for women in sport, we hadn't had, for example, you know, players who didn't have more than 2 jobs until about 3 years ago. A lot of players like Keelan Winters, who was on the Seattle Reign for a long time, I just saw her the other day at the fire station that she works at. You know, you have to be prepared for life after sport, and it is now becoming a part of the organization's ability to do so. And they need social workers and psychologists that are in there, sports psychologists, but also psychologists that are working culturally with different communities. We also have a player on our team this year named Ji So-yoon. Does anybody know who Ji So-yoon is? Amazing. She is the Megan Rapinoe of South Korea. And we had Megan Rapinoe on our team for the many, many years before this as well. But G in particular, we had a question of, well, how do we get G adjusted if she is from Seoul? And also, she's also lived in England, so she speaks beautiful English. She knows her way around. Like, how serious do we have to get in getting this person adjusted to Seattle? And so we had to work and figure out, right, from a multicultural lens, what is going to make the most sense? I'm not saying you need to go the multicultural lens, but what I am telling you is that in sport, unfortunately, the majority of sport outside of women's sports will tokenize communities. But in women's sports in particular, there's a built-in piece of advocacy. with that built-in piece of advocacy, that's where you can spark that and create that change. Because maybe you have a perspective, young, old, whatever your social identity is, right, then to the front office who are majority white folks at the top and not as diverse as the players on the field. So there's a lot that you can do in psychology, and I think with a social work and psych lens, there's a lot more that you can do in sport than you think. And I'm more than happy, if you'd like to talk more, I can connect you with some sports psychologists that we work with. Because our personal sports psychologist is the head sports psychologist for the U.S. Women's National Team and for Canada. So again, these are connections that you all should consider thinking about if you're interested in different fields that all of us have.
No, you crushed it.
Okay. Sorry, white sweatshirt. Yeah, it was, you can go next, yeah. I think, yeah.
Okay, sorry. I have terrible vision, I apologize.
So my name's Pravin Ajula. First of all, thank you for all coming out. I know you guys are busy, so it means a lot. My question is for Steph specifically. Right now, women's sports are riding away with momentum. Just last month, the WNBA draft was more watched than the guys' draft, and the championship game was more watched than the guys' championship game. So, how do you communicate that we also in soccer have world-class athletes, and you guys should take a look at us, not just basketball, and just kind of capitalize off this wave of momentum right now?
Grace, you can do the next one.
That's a really great question, and I really appreciate you asking that. And so I think to start on that answer is to think about how popular women's sports has always been inside of the communities that it has been inside of, all right? So women's sports has a different subsect of audiences that we serve. However, when we talk about basketball versus soccer, we're talking about a pay-per-play model sport versus a sport that is more often provided in a public sports setting. And so who's going to be able to access that? People who identify as culturally diverse, right? Who identify of different multicultural races and languages and so many more, because if we're talking about an urban versus suburban sport, we're already putting racism kind of into the center of the conversation. And so when we talk about, right, the W versus the NWSL, more people prefer to, you know, kind of follow what has been around the longest, the W being more funded by the NBA. The NBA is a subset of the WNBA. The NWSL is now its own entity outside of U.S. Women's National Team and Team USA. Team USA used to own this, and so I'm giving you a lot of background. But it's to say that these communities have always been growing. There's always been grassroots movement. It's the matter of who is at the top that has been allowing that coverage to happen more often than not. I think with the advent of on-demand kind of, you know, services, now that we have like everything streamable, it became more popular on, you know, Twitch and things like that as we kind of came into forefront. But the W itself has been crafting a really great kind of map for the rest of us in women's sports to be able to kind of follow. But what I will say is that now more than ever, I think because we have a platform, we have a voice, COVID-19 shaped a lot of what athletes feel, think, do, and see. The athlete voice becomes the most important part. And for the first time ever, we're looking at individual women athletes versus a collective or a team. Caitlin Clark, everybody I'm sure who could have gotten a ticket to the Indiana Fever game that's going to happen this summer will be here, right? But since when was it that we really focused on an individual with women rather than the collective? And so from a collective lens, the reason why we've been marketing in that way is because that's how we teach female-bodied folks how to breathe, live, talk, walk, right? We have agenic characteristics versus communal traits, meaning communal, you should be more nurturing, you should be more understanding, you should be able to work better as a team, versus men who are taught in sport how to be more confident, be more individualistic, and that's just taught your Eastern and Western European gender roles in those perspectives. So, big question to ask, and I think we're at a point in our systemic society where we're like, enough is enough, and women and gender diverse people deserve to have control over their bodies. And so if sport's one of the only ways that we can do that, I think you're starting to see the rise of people just having enough is enough. And so on top of that, plus celebrating the amazing athletes, I think is something to consider. So it's not necessarily the W's better than the NWSL, it's who's been funded longer. And then from a media lens, how are they talking about the W athletes versus the NWSL athletes? Are they looking more at us as the girls next door because that's how the 99ers work, right? Mia Hamm, Julie Foudy, Joy Fawcett. Or are we looking at it more from the lens of what does Black women mean in society and women of color mean in society? So it's a much larger conversation. Always happy to have a chat and coffee, and I'm a white person, so probably best to also connect you with other folks in the community that may have more of that personal insight too.
Okay, great. Maybe a question that the other panelists can also answer. Black shirt,
Hi, my name is Athena Barron, and I've heard a lot that in communications, since it's such like a broad major and there's so many things, that in order to be more successful, for lack of a better word, that you should find a niche in that area. So firstly, do you agree with that sentiment? And also, how would you suggest people go about finding their niche in communications?
We were actually talking about that right before this. I think communications being so broad is a win, not a defect, because you can take so many components of a communications degree and apply it to a degree in many, many, many different industries. I think I'm a perfect example of that. I now work at tech companies, I lead technology teams, and I work in logistics, and none of those things you would think of for a comm degree. I did specialize it, I did journalism, but that's because it spoke to me. I like writing, I like being a storyteller, but I think each of us might have specialized in slightly different things, broadcast, video production, core communication. So I don't think there's any wrong answer. I would follow whatever your heart desires, try different types of classes like we talked about before, but just know anything in comms, honestly, is super, super relevant for truly any kind of job. So there's really no wrong answer here.
Tag team. Doing the best.
My name is Adam Johnson, and adding on to what was said before, about the information you learn in college and applying to your job, do you feel a lot of the information you do learn as an undergraduate, the research, the skills you develop, are used on your side, or is a lot of it more academic?
So we're gonna let them answer this question, and then we'll do one more, and then we'll break, and we'll be done with the panel.
I think, so I will say the data changes from when you're in school versus when you're out. So like the world, when I was aspiring to be a journalist, I graduated and literally I think like the next week, Seattle PI closed its doors. And so I was super like upset about the fact that I just done all this focus on journalism and now journalism's dying. But I think the research and data you experience while you're here is less relevant than the mechanisms you're learning around how to do stuff with that data. And so I would focus a lot on like when your professor's telling you to write a project a certain way or to focus on different things that are happening maybe in the media or in, whatever's happening in the world. Worry less about that topic and more about how it is you're communicating about that topic or pulling out the data from that topic or kind of figuring out how to tailor it to various audiences. Those things never expire, while the news or something that might be relevant in that moment will change or shift or expire. The way that you engage with it is what you're really learning here. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. That was 100%. I agree with every single component of it. The only nuance difference for me was I had a business license filed with Washington State when I was in high school. And when I came to undergraduate, video production, obviously, wasn't video production, when I came to undergraduate and I started taking classes, every single class I sat down and said, okay, how do I use this for me? How do I use this for my business? And actually, it took quite a while for me to have this mental shift of, I felt like always, it's how do I make the best content for other people? How do I tell their stories? How do I get them in front of people? And then it slowly became me realizing like, oh wait, I should be my own client. Like I should be making content for me. And pairing the idea of like, your story is really important. You're the only one that knows your story. I can guarantee it. However much a sibling, a parent, whoever, like they don't and they're not shouting from the rooftops as much as you can. You have to tell your own story and like finding out how every single class benefits you and gets you the angle of benefiting yourself and not just, the future employer. Yeah, big brain too.
My name is Tim Jo Song. My question is, what sort of projects do you get involved while doing communication around the world? Does it vary, like through social media, presenting to audience and newscasting, or is it like more focused on one particular field? And what is your most favorite form of communication that you worked on?
That's a good question. I touch all of those things. When a client comes to us with a cause that they want to communicate, we work with our strategy team to develop a plan for them that is probably a combination of those things. It probably has a social media piece, it probably has a PR piece, it probably has marketing. There are a lot of those things that we put together in order to get the audience to hear our message. My personal favorite is marketing, and that sounds generic, but of our business and of those kind of strategies that we pull together, I love developing a brief and working with our creative team to create the ads and produce them and put a campaign out into the field, into the market that you would see on streaming TV, on social media, and I like that ideation process at the beginning of like defining sort of how somebody experiences something and sort of tapping into that insight in order to make a campaign is where it's, I think, a really challenging but really fun part of the work. Yeah.
My career, although we've talked a lot of sport ball, is not all sport ball. And so because it's not all sport ball, that means that as a communicator, you kind of have to look at yourself a little bit like a Swiss Army knife, if you will, or a utility knife, or if you like not violence, maybe a utility player in baseball. I don't know, there seems to be somewhat of a combination there. But all to say, the skills that I needed when I worked at the Seattle Department of Transportation and working in community and interpersonal communication, being in front of people and bringing people to an experience at your table or to provide them a resource is one type of communication. And there's marketing and the agency side of it where you really kind of have to truly have all of those knives sharpened and ready to go because at that point your client is the reason why you have a roof over your head, and you're going to have to figure out ways and problem solve, right? Like how we build a communication solution that makes sense and that is successful. And then when you get to the sports realm of things, I mean, shoot, in women's sports, like you're going to be put into situations where you just have to sink or swim. You live and you learn, you keep going. And our league, although is so much better than what it was, there are still breakdowns that happen that shouldn't happen, but they happen because we are a movement in growth and motion. And so as a communicator, sometimes I have to be on the phone and kind of make sure that our broadcast team has everything that they need, that the scripts are looking correct, that the codecs inside of that are correct too. So it's a little bit of everything. You have to kind of make sure that you're ready and prepared, whether it's in crisis or in times of celebration, right? How do I communicate something? What story do I tell? And how does that story really emulate, whether it's interpersonally with somebody that I'm engaging with in person, whether it's online socially, or, you're writing a piece of, for a newspaper or whatever the case may be. So you need all of these skills, because at some point you're going to have to transfer these skills into one of these different mediums. And just being aware of what your personal ability is going to be key to being able to manage all of that.
All right, a huge thank you to the panelists and a round of applause.